My name is Elena, and I am 35 years old. The day I buried my father-in-law, my husband of 10 years, inherited $80 million. The day after the funeral, he ran off with his mistress. He called me a worthless woman and said he didn't need me anymore. He was smiling when he said it. What my husband Javier didn't know was that his father, Ricardo Vargas, was a very smart man, and the official will reading was still 6 days away. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever been underestimated by the people who are supposed to love you most. The smell of wilting lilies in the limousine was suffocating. I sat in my black wool dress, staring out the window at the Madrid skyline blurring past. My father-in-law, Ricardo Vargas, was gone. I felt a genuine sharp ache. In a family that valued flash and status, he was the only one who had ever talked to me about substance, the only one who truly saw me. I reached across the seat for my husband's hand, needing the simple comfort of his touch. Javier didn't move. He didn't even look up from his phone. He hadn't shed a single tear at the funeral. He wasn't grieving. He was calculating. $80 million, Elena. His voice was a giddy, excited whisper that felt obscene in the quiet car. $80 million. Javier, please, I whispered, glancing at the driver on the other side of the privacy glass. We just left the cemetery. He finally looked at me and his eyes were bright and cold, devoid of any sadness. What? Don't be dramatic. You know what a tyrant he was. He's gone. I'm free. We're free. He let out a short, sharp laugh. God, I'm finally free. He didn't say we. He said I. He immediately started talking about the Bentley. He was going to buy a convertible British Racing Green and the penthouse in La Moraleja. He said our 2-bedroom apartment, the one we had lived in for 5 years, was embarrassing. I took a steadying breath. My head was pounding. Javier, that's wonderful, but maybe we should focus on paying off our debt first. We're still not out of the woods from... His face darkened instantly. Our debt? You mean your debt? I mean, the $30,000 credit card bill I just paid for you last month? I said, my voice quiet but firm. The one from your business trip to Ibiza. I had to use my entire bonus from the foundation grant to cover it. He scoffed, a sound I knew well. It was the sound he always made when I mentioned my career. Oh, your little writing job. All those words you type for charity. You just don't get it, do you? He leaned in, his cologne suddenly overwhelming. Your little bonus is pocket change. It's nothing. It's rounding error. He grabbed my chin, his fingers digging in slightly. I'm the one with the money now. I am the one who matters. You don't need to worry your pretty little head about your career anymore. I don't need you to work. In fact, I'd rather you didn't. It's beneath us now. The ride ended at our apartment building, the apartment I had leased 5 years ago before he moved in. The apartment I had paid the rent on every single month while Javier found himself and bounced between failed business ideas. He didn't help with the doors. He didn't offer me a hand. He just strode into the lobby, his posture entirely different. He wasn't the unemployed, struggling husband I'd left the house with this morning. He was a wealthy man. I followed him inside. The silence in the elevator was heavy, suffocating. I just wanted to take off this dress and sleep for a week. He walked straight to our bedroom. I heard him open the closet. I heard the distinct, sharp sound of my suitcase being thrown onto the bed. What are you doing? I asked, standing in the doorway. He turned, his face a mask of cold indifference. He was pulling my clothes from their hangers, armfuls of them, and stuffing them into the bag. I'm helping you pack. Get your things. My blood ran cold. My stomach turned to ice. What are you talking about, Javier? You're scaring me. He laughed. A real laugh this time, loud and cruel. Scaring you? No, Elena. I'm liberating you. He zipped up my largest suitcase filled with a random assortment of my clothes and rolled it into the living room. Get out, Javier. Stop this. My voice was shaking now. This is my apartment. My name is on the lease. And my name is on the $80 million check, he snarled. I'm tired of this apartment. I'm tired of this neighborhood. And I'm tired of you. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the air had been sucked from the room. You're leaving me? No, I'm not leaving. He walked to the kitchen counter and picked up my purse. You are. He walked to the front door and opened it wide. I've been waiting years to do this. Years of pretending to care about your boring job, your boring friends, your boring responsible life. Years of being stuck with you while I waited for the old man to finally die. I supported you, I whispered, the words choking me. When you lost your job 2 years ago, I paid for everything. I paid for this roof over your head. I believed in you. That was your mistake. His smile was terrifying. It didn't reach his eyes. You were just a placeholder, Elena. A convenient, naive, worthless woman. He threw my purse into the hallway. Then he threw my suitcase out after it. My lawyer will call you tomorrow, he said, his voice casual as if he were discussing the weather. He'll send you some papers. You'll get nothing. You're not entitled to my family's money. Javier, please. Your father just died. We're grieving. You're grieving, he corrected. I'm celebrating. Goodbye, Elena. He slammed the door in my face. I stood there in the hallway in my black funeral dress, staring at the wood grain of the door. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place on the other side was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I was homeless. My husband, the man I loved, the man I had supported and defended, had just thrown me out like yesterday's trash. I don't know how long I stood there. I was paralyzed. I couldn't cry. I couldn't move. I just stared at the brass 3B on the door. The ding of the elevator snapped me out of it. The doors opened and Javier's sister, Sophia, stepped out. She was wearing a chic white pantsuit, a stark, deliberate contrast to the day's somber events. Inappropriate for a funeral, but perfect for a celebration. She saw me. She saw my suitcase in the hall. She saw my tear-streaked face and she smiled. A small, smug, satisfied smile. Oh, good. He finally did it, she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. She walked past me without a second glance and knocked on the door. Javier, it's me. Open up. We have reservations at La Finca. The door opened instantly. Javier was there, his own jacket now off, his tie loosened. He hugged her. It's done, he said. Sophia looked back at me over his shoulder, her eyes full of pitying contempt. Listen, Elena, don't make this ugly. You and Javier, you're from 2 different worlds. You were a nice little diversion while he was waiting for his real life to start. But now it has. You don't belong with the Vargas family. Her words, 2 different worlds. It was exactly what she'd said to me at our wedding when she found out my parents were teachers and not bankers. And as she said it, another memory, sharp and clear, cut through my grief. It was 2 weeks ago. Ricardo's bedroom. The heavy scent of antiseptic and old books. Javier and Sophia were downstairs, their voices raised, arguing over who would get the beach house in Marbella. Ricardo had waved me closer. His voice was a dry rattle, but his eyes, they were still sharp. Elena, he whispered. Yes, Ricardo, can I get you some water? No, listen. My children, they are a disappointment. All shine, no substance. All flash, no fire. But you, he coughed, a dry, painful sound. You have integrity. You are the only one who is truly a Vargas. Sir, don't say that. You need to rest. Quiet. I know my son, he rasped, his grip on my hand surprisingly strong. I know his weakness, and I know his greed. When I am gone, he will show you exactly who he is. He will try to cut you out. What do you mean? I asked, a cold dread creeping into me. I have taken care of you, Elena. I have protected your future. But you must promise me one thing. No matter what he says, no matter what he does, you must be at the official will reading. Promise me. I promise, Ricardo, I had said, squeezing his frail hand. The elevator door dinged again, opening. I picked up my suitcase. I grabbed my purse. Sophia was still watching me, her face smug, waiting for me to break down. I wiped my face, my hand surprisingly steady. I looked at her, and then at Javier, who was leaning against the doorframe, a king in his new castle. You're right, Sophia, I said, my voice even. We are from different worlds. I stepped into the elevator. I'll see you both on Monday at the will reading. The elevator doors closed, leaving them both with the first flicker of confusion on their faces. I stood there for, I don't know how long. 1 minute? 10? The hallway carpet of faded beige pattern I'd always hated seemed to swim before my eyes. My feet felt nailed to the floor. The weight of the black wool dress I'd worn to Ricardo's funeral felt like lead. Worthless woman. The words echoed louder than the sound of the door slamming. The ding of the elevator was sharp. It startled me. The door slid open. Javier's sister, Sophia, stepped out. She was wearing a chic, cream-colored pantsuit. It was a stark, almost obscene contrast to the day's somber events. It wasn't funeral attire. It was a celebration outfit. Her eyes, sharp and blue, a stark contrast to our Spanish family, a fact she always seemed to wield as both a shield and a weapon, immediately took in the scene. She saw me. She saw my suitcase in the hall. She saw my face streaked with tears I hadn't even realized I'd shed. She smiled. A small, smug, satisfied smile. "Oh, good. He finally did it," she said. Her voice was smooth like expensive glass. I was wondering how long he'd wait. She walked past me without a second glance, her expensive perfume trailing in her wake, and knocked sharply on the door I'd just been thrown out of. "Javier, it's me. Open up. We have reservations at La Finca at 8. The door opened instantly. Javier was there, his funeral suit jacket already off, his tie loosened. He was smiling. He actually hugged her. "It's done," he said, his voice light with relief. Sophia looked back at me over his shoulder, her expression a mask of pity and contempt. "Listen, Elena," she said, as if speaking to a child or a slow-witted employee. "Don't make this ugly. You and Javier, you're from two different worlds. You were a nice little diversion while he was waiting for his real life to start, but now it has. You don't belong with the Vargas family. Two different worlds." It was the exact phrase she'd used at our wedding 10 years ago when she cornered me by the champagne fountain. I'd overheard her telling one of her bridesmaids, "She's nice enough, I suppose, but her parents are teachers. Can you imagine? Two different worlds." She had always seen me as temporary. I just stared at her. My mind was numb, a buzzing static where my thoughts should have been. "Just take the money he offers, Elena," Sophia continued, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against her phone. "It'll be more than you'd make in a year writing those sad little charity papers. Be smart for once." Her words, "Two different worlds don't belong." They suddenly triggered something. A memory sharp and clear cut through the fog of my grief and humiliation. It wasn't Sophia's voice I heard anymore. It was Ricardo's 2 weeks ago. His massive dark wood bedroom in the Vargas estate. The heavy scent of antiseptic and old books. I was sitting by his bed reading him poetry, the only thing that seemed to calm him. Javier and Sophia were downstairs. I could hear their raised voices echoing up the grand staircase. They were arguing even then about who would get the beach house in Marbella. Ricardo had waved a frail hand, silencing me mid-verse. He motioned me closer. "Elena," he whispered. His voice was a dry rattle, but his eyes, deep-set and intelligent, were still sharp. "Yes, Ricardo. Can I get you some water?" "No, listen." He coughed, a dry, painful sound that shook his thin frame. "My children, they are a disappointment. All shine, no substance. All flash, no fire. But you." He looked at me, his gaze intense. "You have integrity. You are the only one who is truly a Vargas." "Sir, don't say that. You need to rest." I tried to soothe him, but he gripped my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "Quiet. I know my son. I know his weakness, and I know his greed. When I am gone, he will show you exactly who he is. He will try to cut you out." A cold dread had crept into me then. "What do you mean, Ricardo?" "Javier loves me." Ricardo had given a short, bitter laugh that turned into another cough. "Javier loves Javier, and he loves the idea of a supportive wife, but he loves money more." He had squeezed my hand. "I have taken care of you, Elena. I have protected your future, but you must promise me one thing. Anything. No matter what he says, no matter what he does, you must be at the official will reading. You must be in that room. Promise me." "I promise, Ricardo," I had said, disturbed but determined to honor his wish. Now standing in the hallway, the memory felt like a lifeline. "I have protected your future." The elevator dinged again, opening its doors. Waiting. I picked up my suitcase. I grabbed my purse. Sophia was still watching me, her face smug, clearly waiting for me to break down, to beg. I wiped the tears from my face with the back of my hand. My hand was surprisingly steady. I looked at her, and then at Javier, who was leaning against the doorframe, a king in his new stolen castle. "You're right, Sophia," I said, my voice even. "We are from different worlds." I stepped into the elevator. "I'll see you both on Monday at the will reading." I pressed the button for the lobby. The doors began to close, slicing off their shocked and suddenly confused expressions. As the elevator descended, I was still homeless. I was still betrayed. But for the first time since I heard the news of Ricardo's death, I was no longer a victim. I was a woman with a promise to keep. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into a different life. My reflection in the mirrored walls was a stranger, a 35-year-old widow in a funeral dress, clutching a suitcase and a purse. Worthless, the word echoed. The lobby was empty, the marble floor cold and indifferent. I walked out into the humid Madrid evening, the city sounds hitting me like a physical force. I was homeless. I sat on a bench at the bus stop, my mind numb, trying to figure out my next move. I couldn't call my parents. They lived in Barcelona and had always been lukewarm about Javier. But they wouldn't understand this. This kind of calculated cruelty was beyond their middle-class sensibilities. There was only one person, Maria. I called her, my voice breaking as I tried to explain. Javier, he kicked me out." "What?" "Elena, where are you?" Maria's voice was instantly sharp, all sleepiness gone. I'm on a bench outside my building. Stay right there. I'm coming." 10 minutes. When Maria pulled up in her Lexus, she didn't wait for me to explain. She got out, her face a mask of fury, grabbed my suitcase, threw it in the trunk, and bundled me into the passenger seat. "We'll get your other things later. Tonight, you stay with me." "Tomorrow we get a lawyer," she said, her voice the steady grounding force I desperately needed. Maria wasn't just my best friend. She was a corporate lawyer. She understood contracts, obligations, and betrayals. We got to her condo in Chamartín, and she poured me a glass of wine I didn't drink. I just sat on her plush velvet sofa, staring into space. "What about your money?" she asked, pacing. "Your accounts?" He said I'd get nothing, that it's his family's money. The hell it is. "You're his wife. And what about your joint account? Your salary goes in there." A new cold dread settled over me. Oh God, Maria. My salary, the bonus. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type the password. I opened my banking app. The joint account, the one I'd set up, the one my grant writing checks were deposited into, had a balance of $24.13. "He took it," I whispered, showing her the screen. "He took all of it." I scrolled through the transactions. A transfer just after the funeral for $8,000. He'd emptied it. The $8,000 that was supposed to cover our rent and bills for the next 2 months. My $8,000. That absolute son of a... Maria bit off the word. He did it today after his father's funeral. He did it right after we left the cemetery. I realized. The memory of him smiling at his phone in the limo flashing in my mind. He wasn't calculating his inheritance. He was robbing me. Okay. Maria's lawyer mode clicked on. This is good in a terrible way. This is dissipation of assets. A judge will hate this. She looked at me, her expression softening. "Elena, I know you. You've been supporting him for years, haven't you?" I nodded, the humiliation burning my throat. He hasn't had a steady job in 2 years. Not since his last startup failed. I've been paying the rent, the car notes, all of it. And the $30,000 debt he ran up in Ibiza. I paid it off last month, I admitted, with your bonus. It wasn't a question. Maria, how could I be so stupid? How did I not see this? You're not stupid, Elena. You're loyal. You believe in people even when they don't deserve it. You saw a struggling husband. He saw a temporary solution. And Ricardo? Ricardo saw all of it. She was right. Ricardo's words came back to me. I know his weakness. What do I do now? I felt so lost. I have no money. I have nowhere to live. I have a $2 million grant proposal for the Madrid Community Center due in 3 days, and my laptop is still in that apartment. Maria's eyes hardened. First, we call your bank and freeze your personal accounts. Now. Then we call the police. We file a report for illegal eviction. He can't just lock you out of your primary residence. I don't care who's on the lease. We'll get an escort to retrieve your belongings tomorrow, especially that laptop. You are not losing that grant opportunity because that bastard decided to implode. She handed me her phone. Make the call to the bank. I'll make some coffee. We have a long night ahead of us. As I sat there reciting my account numbers to a sleepy bank representative, I felt a small cold ember ignite in my chest. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was anger. Javier and Sofia thought they had won. They thought they had discarded the worthless woman. They had no idea what Ricardo had armed me with. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I finished with the bank and looked at Maria, who handed me a steaming mug. Okay, I said, my voice but steady. He wants a war. Let's show him what one looks like. The next morning, after a sleepless night on Maria's sofa, I woke up with a singular focus. Get my laptop. Maria, already dressed in a sharp court-ready suit, handed me a coffee. The police escort is arranged for 10:01 a.m., she said. We go in, you get your essentials, and we get out. Do not engage with him. But Javier was smarter than that. When the police officer and I arrived, the apartment was empty. My laptop was gone. My files, my drafts, my research for the Madrid grant, all gone. Even my work clothes were missing from the closet. He had taken everything that represented my career, leaving behind only casual outfits and old sweaters. He didn't just want me out. He wanted to cripple me. He must have come back after we left. I told Maria later, my voice numb. He's trying to make you desperate, Elena, she said, her eyes flashing. He's trying to force you to take that $10,000 insult he'll eventually offer. I spent the next 3 days in a frantic haze at Maria's dining table, using her spare computer, trying to recreate my $2 million grant proposal from scratch. I worked on pure adrenaline and caffeine, barely sleeping, the deadline looming like a guillotine. It was during a late-night work session, my eyes burning from staring at the screen, that Maria's phone lit up. Elena, she said, her voice tight with rage. You need to see this. She turned her phone around. It was Instagram. Javier. He was leaning against a gleaming red Ferrari, sunglasses on, a smirk playing on his lips. The caption read, Decisions, decisions. Had to celebrate my freedom properly. Yarn Vargas legacy. Hatch Bentley is next. My stomach churned. That was the car he had talked about in the limo. He'd bought it while I was sleeping on a sofa using the money I had helped our family save. Wait, Maria said, her thumb scrolling. It gets worse. She clicked on Sofia's profile. There was a close-up shot of her wrist adorned with a diamond-encrusted Patek Philippe watch, the kind that costs more than my annual salary. Sofia's hand was resting on the Ferrari's hood, her perfectly manicured nails gleaming. Her caption, a little welcome back to the family gift from my amazing brother. So happy he's finally free to be himself. Some people just can't keep up with the Vargas legacy. Family over everything. Vargas legacy. Family over everything. I repeated, the hypocrisy stinging like acid. She posted that she's not even a Vargas. She's his sister-in-law. No, Elena, Maria corrected, her voice dark. She's his white sister-in-law. It's not just about money for her. It's about status. By marrying into the Vargas family, she got the prestige. By you being thrown out, she solidifies her position. You were a threat to her social standing. Sofia, who had married into the family 10 years ago, had always treated me with a sugary condescension. She hosted charity balls and sat on museum boards, all funded by Ricardo's money. She saw me with my nonprofit work and my modest background as a stain on the family's immaculate public image. Now she was publicly celebrating my removal. I felt sick. He bought her a $50,000 watch while I'm using your spare laptop to save a community center. It's not just Instagram, Maria said, opening her browser. Look at this. She pulled up a popular Madrid-based blog, one that chronicled the social lives of the city's elite. The headline was splashed across the top. Vargas heir back on the market. Javier Vargas inherits 80 milliners, ends low-profile marriage. My hands trembled as I read the article. It was filled with anonymous quotes. We all knew it wouldn't last. one family friend was quoted. Javier is new money royalty, and she was a nice girl, but not on his level. Another source said. He was feeling held back. Now that Ricardo has passed, Javier is free to find a partner who truly fits the Vargas legacy. They were painting me as a gold digger who had failed. They were erasing the last 5 years, erasing the fact that I was the one who had paid the bills, that I was the one who had supported him. They were spinning a narrative that he had escaped a marriage that was beneath him. The humiliation was overwhelming. This wasn't just a private betrayal. It was a public execution. My phone, which had been quiet, began to buzz on the table. And it didn't stop. A text from a colleague at the foundation. Hey, just saw that horrible blog post. Is that true about you and Javier? An email from a board member at the Madrid Center. Elena, I'm sure this is just gossip, but this article is circulating. It's not a good look. Another text. This one from a cousin in Barcelona. Elena, what is going on? Your sister-in-law is posting pictures of watches. They were all seeing it. Everyone in my professional network. Everyone in my extended family. Sofia and Javier hadn't just thrown me out. They were actively poisoning the well, ensuring my personal humiliation would bleed into my professional life. They were trying to define me by their narrative, the worthless, unequal wife who had been discarded. I shut my laptop, the grant proposal, the $2 million all seemed to blur. Elena, don't let him win, Maria said, grabbing my hand. Don't let them do this. He took my work, Maria. He took my money. Now he's taking my reputation. What am I supposed to do? You're going to finish that proposal, she said, her voice fierce. You're going to secure that funding. And then on Monday, you are going to walk into that will reading, and you are going to remember what Ricardo told you. You are the one with integrity. Let them have their cheap, flashy weekend. The truth is coming, and it's going to be glorious. I looked at the picture of Sofia, her white hand resting on the red Ferrari, her smile triumphant. She had no idea she was celebrating her own downfall. I turned off my phone, silencing the flood of humiliating messages. Okay, I said, opening the laptop again. Let's get this grant. The next 48 hours were a blur of statistics, budgets, and narrative writing. I poured all my anger, my grief, and my humiliation into that proposal. I barely ate. I didn't sleep. I just wrote. I was fighting for more than just the community center. I was fighting for my own sanity, proving to myself that I was more than the worthless woman Javier had thrown away. On Friday afternoon, exactly 1 hour before the deadline, I hit send on the $2 million grant proposal. A wave of exhaustion so profound hit me that I nearly blacked out. It's done, I whispered to Maria, who was working from home beside me. Good, she said, closing her own laptop. Now sleep. You have a big day on Monday. You need to be rested when you become a millionaire. As I drifted off, my last thought was of Javier's smug face. He thought he had taken everything from me. He had no idea he had just given me the one thing I never knew I needed, a reason to fight back. I slept for 12 hours straight, a dead, dreamless sleep. I woke up on Saturday morning feeling groggy but human. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a dull ache. Maria was already up, sitting at her kitchen island with her laptop open, sipping coffee. Look who's alive, she smiled. Good. You finished the grant just in time. Now we deal with the rest of your life. Step 1, coffee. Step 2, we find you a shark. My corporate law firm doesn't handle divorce, but I know who does. She was about to make a call when my phone, which I had reluctantly turned back on, buzzed on the counter. It was an unknown number. A local Madrid area code. Don't answer that, Maria warned. It's probably another blogger wanting a quote. It might be a client, I murmured, my sense of responsibility overriding my fear. I let it ring. A voicemail icon popped up immediately. I played the message, putting it on speaker. Ms. Vargas. The voice was smooth, polished, and unfamiliar. My name is Jonathan Reed from the law firm Reed, Baxter and Swan. I am representing your husband, Mr. Javier Vargas, in his petition for divorce. It seems we've had some trouble reaching you. Please call my office at your earliest convenience to discuss a most generous preliminary settlement offer. Maria raised an eyebrow. Generous? That's not a word I associate with anything we've seen this week. He's not wasting any time, I said, my stomach twisting. He filed on Friday. Now he has a lawyer calling on Saturday. He wants this done before the will reading, Maria said, the realization dawning on both of us. He wants you signed, sealed, and gone before you can make any trouble on Monday. Call him back. Let's hear what this generous offer is. With Maria sitting across from me, I dialed the number. The lawyer Reed picked up on the second ring as if he'd been waiting. Ah, Ms. Vargas. Elena, thank you for returning my call, he said, his voice oozing professional charm. I'm sure this is a difficult time for you, and my client, Mr. Vargas, wishes to make this transition as painless as possible. Painless? I repeated, the word tasting like ash. Quite. Now, we've drawn up a simple dissolution agreement. Standard terms. You waive all claims to any future assets, specifically the inheritance from Mr. Vargas's father, which, as I'm sure you understand, is non-marital property. You agree to vacate the premises I'm already locked out of. I cut in, my voice cold. Yes. Well, the details. He brushed it off. The point is, in recognition of your time together, and in the interest of a swift and private resolution, Mr. Vargas is prepared to offer you a one-time settlement of $10,000. $10,000 for 10 years of my life, for supporting him, for paying his debts, for the public humiliation, for locking me out, for stealing my laptop, and the $8,000 from my bank account. $10,000, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. It's a very generous offer, Ms. Vargas, Reed said, his tone condescending. Frankly, it's more than you're entitled to. As you are not named in Mr. Vargas's inheritance, you have no claim to it. My client is offering this purely out of the goodness of his heart to help you get back on your feet. Maria was scribbling furiously on a legal pad, her expression murderous. She tapped the pad and wrote, "Ask him to send it in writing. Please send me the offer in writing, Mr. Reed. I'd like to review it." The lawyer chuckled, a dry, patronizing sound. "Review it, Ms. Vargas. I assure you this is the best offer you will receive. It expires on Monday at 9:01 a.m., precisely 1 hour before the will reading. If you choose to contest this, Mr. Vargas is prepared to fight, and I assure you his resources are considerable. $10,000 could be very helpful to someone in your position, or you can have nothing. Your choice." He thought I was stupid. He thought I was desperate. He thought he could bully me just like Javier did. I thought of Ricardo's promise. "I have protected your future. You must be at the will reading. Thank you for the information, Mr. Reed," I said, my voice suddenly calm and clear. "But I will not be accepting the $10,000. There was a surprised silence on the other end. "I will also not be signing any documents before Monday," I continued. "I was personally invited to the will reading by Ricardo Vargas, and I intend to be there to honor his memory." The lawyer's voice lost its smooth charm. "Ms. Vargas, I must advise you that would be a very foolish mistake. You are not named in that will. Attending will only serve to humiliate you further. Take the money. It's a gift." "It's an insult," I replied. "I will see you on Monday." I hung up before he could respond. Maria was staring at me, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Elena Vargas," she said, "you are an absolute badass." "I don't feel like one," I whispered, my hand shaking. He sounded so sure, Maria. What if he's right? What if Ricardo was just sick? What if he forgot? What if there's nothing for me? What if there is? Maria countered. "That lawyer isn't just confident. He's rushing. He's trying to get your signature before something happens. Javier is terrified of you being in that room on Monday, and now I'm dying to know why." I hung up the phone, the lawyer's patronizing laugh still ringing in my ears. "Don't be foolish." He had said it with such certainty. For a moment, I almost believed him. What if Ricardo, in his final illness-clouded days, had changed his mind? What if his promise was just the rambling of a dying man, and I was setting myself up for one final public humiliation? Maria looked at me, her eyes firm. "He's bluffing, Elena." That was pure intimidation. "They're scared. Hold the line." Before I could even respond, my phone rang again. This time, the screen flashed with a name that made my heart stop. Javier. He hadn't called me directly since the moment he'd thrown me out. I looked at Maria, my panic rising. She just nodded, her expression hardening. "Answer it, and put it on speaker." I fumbled for the button, my thumb shaking. "Hello. What the hell is wrong with you?" His voice wasn't just angry. It was a furious roar. He must have been listening on the other line with his lawyer. "Who do you think you are, rejecting my lawyer's offer? $10,000 is more money than you've ever seen in one place, you ungrateful." "Hello, Javier," I said, my voice surprisingly clear. I glanced at Maria, who tapped her own phone screen, indicating she was recording this as a backup. I pressed the record button on my own. "Don't you hello Javier me?" he shouted. "My lawyer just told me what you said. You think you're going to come to the will reading? Are you insane? Your name is not in that will. You get nothing. I am offering you $10,000 out of the goodness of my heart, which is more than you deserve." And you spit in my face. I took a deep breath, picturing Ricardo's face, his kind, sharp eyes. "Javier, I am your legal wife," I said, my voice level. "And I will be at Mr. Hayes' office on Monday morning, just as your father personally requested." The silence on the other end was a tightly coiled spring. When he spoke again, his voice was low, venomous, and all the charm he ever possessed was gone, stripped away to reveal the raw entitlement beneath. "You will not," he hissed. "If you dare show your face at that office, Elena, I swear to God, I will destroy you." "What are you talking about? You think you're so respected? You think your little non-profit world cares about you? I will tell every single person we know, every board member, every client that you were a gold digger who married me for my family's money. I'll tell them you were unfaithful. I'll tell them you were the reason my father's final months were so stressful. I will bury you, Elena. By the time I'm done, you won't be able to get a job writing obituaries in this city, let alone managing a $2 million grant." He knew about the grant. I had told him about it weeks ago, excited about the possibility. He was now using my own ambition as a weapon. "Are you threatening me, Javier?" I asked, keeping my voice perfectly calm for the recording. "I'm making you a promise," he screamed. "Take the $10,000 and disappear, or I will wipe you from the face of this city. You will be nothing. You'll be right back where you started. A worthless, broke nobody. Do you understand me?" I looked at Maria. Her eyes were wide, but she was nodding, a grim smile on her face. "I understand you perfectly, Javier," I said, and I hung up the phone. I pressed stop on the voice recorder. The file saved neatly to my phone. Javier threat Saturday. "My God," I whispered, the adrenaline finally hitting me, making me shake. "That," Maria said, taking the phone from my hand and emailing the file to herself, "is what we call intent, and it's exactly what we needed." She looked at me, her professional demeanor softening. "He's not just a fool, Elena. He's a bully, and bullies only understand one thing: losing." "He sounded so sure I'm not in the will," I said, the doubt creeping back in. "He's panicking," Maria insisted. "He wouldn't be threatening you. He wouldn't be rushing a $10,000 settlement on a Saturday if he was sure of his position. He's terrified of what's going to happen on Monday. And honestly, I cannot wait to find out why. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. Sunday was a blur of nervous energy. Maria tried to distract me with movies, but I couldn't focus. I just kept replaying Javier's threats over and over. What if he was right? What if Ricardo had simply told me what I wanted to hear? What if I was walking into a trap about to be humiliated one last time? "He's panicking," Maria said again, seeing the fear on my face. "Rich, arrogant men don't make personal threats unless they're losing control. Hold the line." On Monday morning, I woke before dawn. I didn't dress like a victim. I didn't dress like a widow. I dressed like a professional. I put on my best navy blue sheath dress, the one I wore for my most important grant presentations. I did my hair, put on subtle makeup, and wore the simple pearl earrings Ricardo had given me as a welcome to the family gift 10 years ago. I looked poised, calm, and unbreakable. I felt like I was walking into battle. Mr. Hayes' office was on the top floor of a skyscraper in downtown Madrid, all glass and polished granite. When I walked in, they were already there. It was like a caricature of new money. Javier was lounging in a leather armchair, wearing a flashy Tom Ford suit that screamed, "I just inherited a fortune." He was tapping his foot impatiently. Sophia was perched on the edge of another chair, scrolling through her phone. She was wearing the $50,000 Patek Philippe watch he had bought her. She glanced up as I entered, her lips curling into a sneer. "Oh, look at that," she announced to Javier, not even bothering to look at me directly. It actually came. Her voice was loud, designed to humiliate. "You have guts, Elena. I'll give you that. Coming all this way just to be officially told you get nothing." I ignored her and nodded politely to Mr. Hayes' secretary. "Elena Vargas. I'm here for the 11 reading." "Of course, Mrs. Vargas. Mr. Hayes is expecting you." The use of Mrs. Vargas made Sophia's eyes narrow. Javier didn't even look at me. He was too busy checking his watch, a new one, gold and absurdly large. "Can we get this over with, Hayes?" He called toward the closed office door. "I have an appointment to test drive a yacht at 11:30, and I don't intend to be late." The door opened, and Mr. Hayes stood there. He was a tall, imposing man in his 60s, with a reputation for being the sharpest legal mind in Madrid. He wore a perfectly tailored three-piece suit. He looked at me, and his expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Vargas," he said, nodding. "Thank you for coming. Please come in." His gaze then fell on Javier and Sophia, and the warmth vanished. "Mr. Vargas, Ms. Lopez, my office." We filed into the conference room. It was dominated by an enormous mahogany table with a stunning view of the city skyline. I sat at one end. Javier and Sophia sat together on the opposite side like a king and his court jester. Mr. Hayes sat at the head of the table and placed a thick leather-bound document in front of him. "Welcome," he said, his voice filling the room. "We are gathered here today to read the final will and testament of my client and friend, Ricardo Vargas. I have already confirmed with all parties that this is the final executed version, and there are no other codicils or documents." Javier sighed loudly. Yes, we get it. Can we just skip to the part where I get the money?" Mr. Hayes fixed him with a stare that could freeze fire. "Mr. Vargas, I will read this will exactly as Ricardo instructed me to. It was his final wish that it be read in its entirety in this room with all of you present. I suggest you find some patience." Sophia shifted in her seat, suddenly looking less comfortable. Mr. Hayes began to read. He started with the small bequests. There was a $100,000 donation to the University of Madrid, his alma mater. There were small personal gifts to his oldest friends. He left his vintage record collection to his younger brother. Javier was practically vibrating with impatience. He tapped his fingers on the table. He checked his watch again. "Hayes, come on!" He finally snapped, cutting the lawyer off mid-sentence. "No offense to my uncle's love of jazz, but I have a 70th yacht waiting for me. Get to the main part. The $80 million, my part." Mr. Hayes slowly looked up from the document, his expression unreadable. He looked at Javier. He looked at Sophia. Then he looked directly at me. "As you wish, Mr. Vargas," he said, his voice dangerously smooth. "Let's get to the main part." Mr. Hayes stopped reading. He looked up, his face impassive. He slowly, deliberately took off his reading glasses and polished them with a cloth from his breast pocket. The silence in the room was absolute, louder than Javier's outburst. Sophia shifted, her arrogance faltering for just a second, like a flicker in a faulty light. Javier, however, looked supremely annoyed, as if the lawyer was a slow waiter who had forgotten his drink. "Very well, Mr. Vargas," Hayes said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "If you are in such a hurry to bypass your father's final wishes, far be it from me to stop you. I will skip to the primary bequest." He put his glasses back on and turned several pages in the thick leather-bound document. He cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Page 4, Article 3. Regarding the main assets of my estate, including all shares of Vargas Holdings, my complete real estate portfolio, and all liquid investments currently valued at approximately $80 million. He paused. I could see Javier physically leaning forward, his entire body thrumming with greed. He was literally on the edge of his seat, a predator waiting for the kill. Ricardo Vargas, being of sound mind, do bequeath the entirety of this $80 million estate to my only son, Javier Vargas." Javier exploded. He didn't just smile. He leaped to his feet, pumping his fist in the air like he'd just won the Super Bowl. "Yes!" he shouted, the sound echoing off the polished wood walls. "Yes, finally. 80 million, did you hear that, Sophia? $80. He spun around, his expensive Tom Ford suit jacket fanning out, and strutted toward the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the Madrid skyline. He spread his arms wide, pressing his palms against the glass as if to claim the entire city. "It's all mine. This whole damn city is mine." Sophia was right behind him, clapping her hands, her Patek Philippe watch flashing under the lights. "We did it, Javier. We're free. No more listening to the old man criticize everything. You're the king now." Javier turned, his eyes finally landing on me. I hadn't moved. I just sat there watching him. The look on his face was pure, unadulterated triumph, mixed with a cold cruelty I had spent 10 years trying to pretend wasn't there. He walked slowly toward me, his smile a predator's grin. He braced his hands on the arms of my chair, leaning in close, trapping me. "Well, Elena," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Did you hear that? $80 million, and all of it mine." I just met his gaze. "It seems the show is over," he said, straightening up and projecting his voice so Mr. Hayes and Sophia could hear. "You can go now. I know you were hoping for a handout, maybe some scraps from the table, but the will is clear." "You get nothing." He let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "Actually, you know what? I'm feeling generous. I'll stick to my original offer. That $10,000. Consider it a severance package for all those years you spent. What was it you did again?" "Oh, right. Writing." Sophia giggled from the window. "Don't forget, Javier. She's going to need that $10,000 for her own lawyer after you sue her for—" what was it? "Emotional distress." "That's right." Javier snapped his fingers as if remembering a brilliant joke. "See, Elena, I'm still being nice even after you rejected my lawyer. Now get out. This is a private family matter." He motioned toward the door with a flick of his wrist. "You can see yourself out and send me your Uber receipt. I'll cover it, my final act of charity." I looked at him. I looked at Sophia, who was smirking, her arms crossed. I looked at Mr. Hayes, who was watching this entire performance, his face a mask of stone. And I didn't move. "What are you, deaf?" Javier sneered, his patience gone. I said, "Get out. The reading is over." I turned my gaze from him, past Sophia, and settled it firmly on the lawyer at the head of the table. "Mr. Hayes," I said, and I was proud of how my voice didn't shake. "He didn't let you finish reading the sentence." Javier's words hung in the air, thick and oily. "Send me your Uber receipt." And he was preparing to stand to walk out of this room and onto his new 70th yacht. A king, dismissing a servant. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just looked past his smug, triumphant face and met the eyes of Mr. Hayes. Mr. Hayes, who had remained perfectly still during Javier's entire performance, slowly raised his head. He looked at Javier, who was now halfway out of his chair, and said in a voice that cut through the room like cold steel, "Mr. Vargas, please sit down." Javier paused, annoyed. "What for?" "I'm done. We're done. I have places to be." "I would strongly advise you to sit down," Mr. Hayes said. "The reading is not, as you so eloquently put it, over. You seem to have missed the most critical part of your inheritance." Sophia let out an exasperated sigh from the window. "What are you talking about, Hayes? You just read it. Javier gets everything. She gets nothing. It's simple. Don't drag this out." Mr. Hayes ignored her completely. His gaze was locked on my husband. "Mr. Vargas, did you bother to read the full certified copy of the will I sent by courier to your residence last week? Or did you, as I suspect, just read the first line of Article 3 and stop?" Javier's face flushed. He was clearly annoyed at being challenged. "What?" I glanced at it. It said I get the money. $80 million. That's all I needed to know. It's not complicated. "On the contrary," Mr. Hayes said, a dangerous edge to his voice. "It is very complicated, and your failure to read the document your father prepared for you is perhaps the most expensive mistake you will ever make in your life." He leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Allow me, for your benefit, to reread Article 3. This time, I will include the entire sentence. The room was suddenly very, very quiet. Even Javier seemed to sense that something was wrong. He slowly, reluctantly sank back into his chair. Mr. Hayes cleared his throat. Page 4, Article 3. I, Ricardo Vargas, being of sound mind, do bequeath the entirety of this $80 million estate. He paused, his eyes lifting to look right at Javier. To my only son, Javier Vargas, with one material condition precedent. The last 5 words landed like stones dropped in a silent pond. Javier's smile froze. What? What condition? Sophia stepped away from the window, her own smile gone. A condition? What nonsense is this? He can't do that. Oh, he absolutely can, Mr. Hayes said. And he did. As I was saying, this bequest and the entirety of Javier's inheritance shall only be considered valid if, and only if, at the time of my death, and continuing for a period of no less than 10 years thereafter, he remains in a faithful, stable, and supportive marriage to his current wife, Elena Vargas. The explosion was immediate. What? Javier leapt from his chair, his voice a full-blown shout. That's insane. He can't do that. That's not legal. It's her. Sophia shrieked, her face twisting into an ugly mask of rage. She pointed a finger at me. She manipulated him while he was sick. She did this. I thought of Ricardo, his hand in mine. I know my son. I have protected your future. Mr. Hayes held up a hand, silencing them both. I can assure you it is perfectly legal. Ricardo was in his right mind, and his intent was clear. He also anticipated this exact reaction, which brings us to Article 4, the penalty clause. Penalty? Javier was pacing now, his hands yanking at his expensive tie. In the event that Javier, Mr. Hayes continued reading, his voice a calm, relentless monotone, through his own poor judgment, arrogance, or infidelity, chooses to abandon, separate from, or divorce his wife, Elena Vargas, an action which shall be determined at the sole discretion of my executor, Mr. Hayes. Then the entirety of the bequest detailed in Article 3 shall be immediately rendered null and void. Javier stopped pacing. He looked like he'd been punched. Void? What? What does that mean? Void. He's bluffing, Sophia said, but her voice was shaking. The money? Where does it go? To some charity? To the church? Mr. Hayes slowly turned the page. He looked at Javier. He looked at Sophia. And then, for the first time, he smiled. It was not a kind smile. He looked directly at me. In the event that Article 3 is rendered void, he read, his voice strong and clear. The entirety of the $80 million estate, including all assets, properties, and funds, shall be transferred immediately and irrevocably into the sole ownership of my beloved daughter-in-law, Elena Vargas, who has proven herself to be the only one in my immediate family who understands that true legacy is built on integrity, strength, and character, not just a last name. The only sound in the room was the sharp, sudden intake of Sophia's breath. Javier just stared at me, his face a white, bloodless mask of horror. I looked down at my husband, the man I had loved, supported, and defended for 10 years. He was scrambling on the expensive rug of his father's lawyer, his face a mask of sweaty, desperate panic. The $80 million man, who only moments ago had told me to send him my Uber receipt, was now begging. Elena, say something. Tell him we were just kidding. You love me, right? His words hung in the air. He wasn't asking. He was trying to cash in on the last asset he thought he had. My loyalty. I slowly stood up, smoothing the front of my black funeral dress. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Sophia was frozen against the wall, her face pale. Love, I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the silence. I did love you, Javier. I loved the man I thought you were. I loved the man who I believed was just struggling, not the man who was simply lazy. I supported you when you were unemployed for 2 years. I paid your $30,000 credit card debts, the ones you racked up in Ibiza. I wrote the business plans for your failed startups, the ones you took all the credit for. I walked past him and stood at the window, looking down at the Madrid skyline. You called me a worthless woman. You said I was a naive placeholder. You told me I wasn't needed anymore. I turned back to face him, his panicked eyes meeting mine. It seems my worth isn't zero after all, Javier. It's 80 million. Sophia finally found her voice. It wasn't a whisper. It was a high-pitched, furious shriek. You knew this was a setup. You knew about this clause all along. You manipulated him. You manipulated Ricardo while he was sick. You did this. I looked at her, the woman who had smirked at me in the hallway of my own home. I didn't manipulate anyone, Sophia. I just kept a promise I made to Ricardo. He knew his son. He knew his greed. He knew his weakness. Ricardo didn't set a trap for Javier. He gave him a test. A simple 10-year test of character, of loyalty. And Javier couldn't even last 10 days. Mr. Vargas, Mr. Hayes interrupted, his voice bringing the cold, hard reality crashing back into the room. Since you have officially voided Article 3, Article 4 is now in full effect. The estate transfers to Mrs. Vargas effective immediately. Wait! Javier yelled, scrambling to his feet. The money is already in my account. I already transferred it. Mr. Hayes nodded, completely unfazed. Yes, the $10 million that was advanced to you last week for preliminary estate expenses. We are aware. That transfer was contingent upon the will being executed as written. Since you violated the terms before this reading by filing for divorce and abandoning your wife, that $10 million is now the property of Mrs. Vargas. What about the car? Sophia whispered, her eyes wide with a new horror. What car? Hayes asked, though his calm expression told me he knew exactly what car. The Ferrari, Javier choked out. I bought it on Saturday. I just drove it here. Then that Ferrari was purchased with funds that did not belong to you, Mr. Hayes stated flatly. It now belongs to Elena. We will, of course, be sending a retrieval team to collect it this afternoon from the valet. And, Mr. Hayes added, his gaze shifting to Sophia, who looked like she was about to be sick. I believe there was also a gift, a Patek Philippe watch valued at $50,000. Sophia instinctively grabbed her wrist, covering the watch with her other hand. You can't, she breathed. That was also purchased with funds from the estate, Hayes continued, relentless. It is also now the property of Mrs. Vargas. You will return it to my office by 5 p.m. today, or we will file a criminal complaint for receipt of stolen property. Sophia's face crumpled. Her status symbol, her reward for celebrating my ousting, had just become evidence in a felony. Javier's arrogance was completely gone, replaced by a desperate, pathetic panic. He stumbled toward me, his hands out, his face a mess of confusion and terror. Elena, baby, listen to me. We can fix this. His voice was slick. That old charm he used to get his way, now laced with desperation. It was a mistake. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking straight. You know I love you. This was all just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I asked. You throwing me out of my apartment was a misunderstanding. You stealing $8,000 from our joint account was a misunderstanding. You telling me, and I quote, I don't need you anymore, worthless woman. I didn't mean it. He pleaded, his eyes wild. We can take it back. I'll cancel the divorce filing right now. Hayes, cancel the divorce. Mr. Hayes just looked at him over the rim of his glasses. That's not how it works, Mr. Vargas. The act of filing was the breach. The will is clear. The inheritance is voided. Elena, please. He tried to grab my hands, but I stepped back out of his reach. Don't do this to me, to us. We're family. Think about our life together. 10 years. I looked at this man, this stranger who had shared my bed for a decade. Ricardo was right. He was weak. He wasn't sorry for the betrayal. He was only sorry he'd been caught. He wasn't sorry he'd called me worthless. He was sorry that his worthless wife now held all the cards. I am thinking about our life, Javier, I said, my voice soft but final. I'm thinking about the last 5 years when I worked 60-hour weeks writing grants to pay our rent while you criticized my boring job. I'm thinking about the $30,000 debt I paid off for you. I'm thinking about you laughing with your sister in the limo while your father's body was still warm. I'm thinking about you stealing my laptop so I couldn't even do my job. I shook my head. You don't love me, Javier. You only love what I could do for you. And as you so clearly pointed out on Tuesday, you don't need me anymore. I turned my back on him. I faced Mr. Hayes, who was watching me with a look of profound, respectful approval. Mr. Hayes, I said, my voice clear and strong. Thank you for executing my father-in-law's wishes so perfectly. Please proceed with the immediate transfer of all assets. I have a $2 million grant proposal for the Madrid Community Center that I need to get back to, and now I can finally afford to fund it myself. I walked toward the door. Elena, wait. Javier screamed from behind me. You can't just leave. You're ruining my life. You owe me. I'm your husband. I paused at the door, my hand on the handle, but I didn't turn around. No, Javier, I said. You ruined your own. I'm just starting mine. I walked out of the office, past the shocked secretary, and into the elevator. As the doors closed, I let out the breath I felt like I had been holding for 10 years. The city of Madrid spread out before me through the glass lobby. It was bright, clear, and for the first time, it felt like it was mine. I was free. Sophia let out a strangled sound, clutching her wrist, her face a mask of disbelief. The $50,000 status symbol she had flaunted just minutes ago was now a piece of stolen property. But it was Javier who truly fell apart. His arrogance, his confidence, his entire identity shattered in an instant. He stumbled forward not with anger, but with a raw, ugly panic I had never seen before. He actually fell to his knees on the expensive Persian rug, grabbing at the hem of my dress. Elena, baby, listen to me. We can fix this, he pleaded, his voice cracking, the tears streaming down his face now. Real hot tears of terror. It was a mistake. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking straight. You know I love you. This was all just a misunderstanding. He was trying to use that voice, the charming, sweet, manipulative voice that had worked on me for 10 years, the voice that convinced me to pay his debts, to forgive his mistakes, to believe in his potential. Tell him, Elena, he begged, tugging at my skirt like a child. Tell him you forgive me. Tell him to stop. We can split it 50-50. No, 60-40. It's yours. Just don't leave me with nothing. Please. I looked down at this man. This stranger crumpled at my feet. Ricardo was right. He was weak. He wasn't sorry for the betrayal. He was only sorry he'd been caught. He wasn't sorry he'd called me worthless. He was just terrified that his worthless wife now held all the cards. I slowly pulled my dress from his grasp and stepped back. I am thinking about our life, Javier, I said, my voice soft but final. I'm thinking about the last 5 years when I worked 60-hour weeks writing those boring grants to pay our rent while you criticized my little job. I'm thinking about the $30,000 credit card debt I paid off for you last month. I'm thinking about you laughing with your sister in the limo while your father's body was still warm. I'm thinking about you stealing my laptop so I couldn't even do my job. I shook my head. You don't love me, Javier. You only love what I could do for you. And as you so clearly pointed out 5 days ago, you don't need me anymore. I turned my back on him, a symbolic act that felt like closing a heavy ancient door. I faced Mr. Hayes, who was watching me, not with pity, but with a look of profound, respectful approval. Mr. Hayes, I said, my voice clear and strong. Thank you for executing my father-in-law's wishes so perfectly. Please proceed with the immediate transfer of all assets. I have a $2 million grant proposal for the Madrid Community Center that I need to get back to. And now, I added, a small, genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in a week. I can finally afford to fund it myself. I walked toward the door. Elena, wait. Javier screamed from behind me, his voice a raw, desperate howl. You can't just leave. You're ruining my life. You owe me. I'm your husband. I paused at the door, my hand on the handle, but I didn't turn around. No, Javier, I said. You ruined your own. I'm just starting mine. I pulled the door open and walked out, leaving them behind in the ruins of their own greed. I didn't look back. As I stepped into the elevator, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 10 years. The glass wall of the elevator descended, revealing the Madrid skyline spreading out before me, bright and clear. For the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free. Javier's legs gave out. He didn't just sit. He collapsed onto the expensive Persian rug, his hands grabbing instinctively at the hem of my dress as I turned to leave. "Elena, baby. Wait. Please." His voice was a sound I had never heard before. A high, thin, cracking noise. The arrogance, the confidence, the cruelty from just 10 minutes ago had vanished, replaced by the raw, ugly panic of a cornered animal. "Elena, listen to me," he pleaded. His face, which I had once found so handsome, now slick with sweat and contorted with terror. "We can fix this. It was a mistake. I was grieving. You know how I get. I wasn't thinking straight. You know I love you. I've always loved you." He was trying to use that voice, the smooth, charming, manipulative voice that had worked on me for 10 years. The voice that convinced me to pay his $30,000 credit card debts. The voice that explained away his failed startups and his 2 years of unemployment. The voice that had just 5 days ago called me a worthless woman. "Tell him," he begged, tugging at my skirt like a petulant child. "Tell Hayes to stop. Tell him you forgive me. We can split it. That's fair, right? 50-50. No, 60-40. It's yours. I don't care. Just don't leave me with nothing. Please, Elena, don't do this to me. To us." He looked up at me, his eyes wild. "We're family. Think about our life together. 10 years. I looked down at this stranger. This man crumpled at my feet. Ricardo was right. He was weak. He wasn't sorry for the betrayal. He was only sorry he'd been caught. He wasn't sorry he'd called me worthless. He was just terrified that his worthless wife now held all the cards, all $80 million of them. I slowly, deliberately reached down and pulled the fabric of my dress from his desperate grasp. I stepped back, putting a final physical distance between us. "I am thinking about our life, Javier," I said, my voice soft but final. "I'm thinking about the last 5 years when I worked 60-hour weeks writing those boring grants to pay our rent, while you sat on that sofa criticizing my little job. I'm thinking about the $30,000 debt I paid off for you last month. I'm thinking about you laughing with your sister in the limousine while your father's body was still warm. I'm thinking about you stealing my laptop, my work, so I couldn't even function." I shook my head, the last bit of attachment I felt for him turning to dust. "You don't love me, Javier. You never did. You only love what I could do for you. You loved my stability, you loved my income, and you loved my loyalty. And as you so clearly pointed out 5 days ago, you don't need me anymore." I turned my back on him. It was a symbolic act, a closing of a heavy ancient door that I had been propping open with my own strength for far too long. I faced Mr. Hayes, who was watching me, not with pity, but with a look of profound, respectful approval. "Mr. Hayes," I said, my voice clear and strong, the voice of a woman who finally knew her own value. "Thank you for executing my father-in-law's wishes so perfectly. Please proceed with the immediate transfer of all assets. I have a $2 million grant proposal for the Madrid Community Center that I need to get back to. And now," I added, a small genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, "I can finally afford to fund it myself." I walked toward the door, my heels clicking decisively on the polished mahogany floor. "Elena, wait," Javier screamed from behind me, his voice a raw, desperate howl. It was no longer a plea. It was a command from a king who had just lost his throne. "You can't just leave. You're ruining my life. You owe me. I'm your husband." I paused at the door, my hand on the heavy brass handle. I could feel his gaze and Sophia's burning into my back, but I didn't turn around. "No, Javier," I said, my voice echoing in the stunned silence of the room. "You ruined your own. I'm just starting mine." I pulled the door open and walked out, past the shocked secretary and into the elevator. As the doors closed, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 10 years. The glass wall of the elevator descended, revealing the Madrid skyline spreading out before me, bright, clear, and vast. For the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free. Here is the lesson learned from the story. True worth is never defined by someone else's opinion. Elena was called worthless by the lazy husband she had supported for years. Yet her father-in-law secretly recognized her integrity as the true family legacy. He crafted his $80 million will not as a gift, but as a test of his son's character. Javier, blinded by greed and arrogance, immediately abandoned the one person who was his anchor, causing his own instant downfall. This story teaches us that integrity is the ultimate asset. While others chase the illusion of wealth, building your life on character and self-respect is the only foundation that cannot be taken from you. Have you ever watched someone's true colors get exposed by money? Share your story in the comments below.